And at City Hall, okay, well, we'll call it in a second, at City Hall in Timmins, Ontario, at the start of June, much like us, they would pass a bylaw, but their bylaw would ban ties.
Really?
Yeah, they would ban ties for June, July, August, and September in Timmins, Ontario. And it was a little joke bylaw. You could never enforce it or anything. But you know something? Even on television, the local TV station, right, the guy reading the news and the sports reporter and everyone didn't wear ties all summer. Right? Just right? Because so, you know, you could be, if you were in Timmins, Ontario back in, the pot hogger days. In fact, you know what? If you'd wear a skirt one day, we'd forgive you the tie. Just as a laugh. Just, okay. Everybody, let's call the meeting to order. Good afternoon and welcome to the June 25th meeting. The very first thing for us to look at today, Council, and first of all, you are going to notice three of our colleagues have disappeared. Councillor John Walsh is not with us today. Deputy Mayor Locke is not with us, and our CAO Michelle Peach also out of town this week as well. But that's what happens with the summer season. It goes with the fact that only those who don't know any better are still wearing ties. Councillor Aker and Mr. Yevchek for the summer. First thing for us to look at today would be the agenda. I will accept the motion on the agenda as presented. Moved by Councillor Stoyle, seconded by Councillor Ledwell. I do have one item here, provision of bus services. I'm assuming will come in under the Community Services Report, Councillor Tessier. That is the only item outside that I have. Do anyone else have any items to add to the agenda that would not be classified as just new business?
I have just a small expansion on Canada Day.
You have another item relating to, but that's already in the report?
It may not be, but this is an expansion on Canada Day.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Anything else? Hearing none, we'll call it. All those in favor of the agenda as presented, say aye. Contrary-minded motion is carried. First item, minutes and the action report from our June 11th council meeting. I will accept a motion to accept them as presented, moved by Councillor Aker, seconded by Councillor Tessier. Are there any errors or omissions? Again, this is from the meeting of June 11th. Any errors or omissions? After the review, there are none. The recording secretary, the clerk, will be overjoyed. There are no errors, there are no omissions. All those in favor? Contrary-minded motion is carried. Business arising, again from the minutes of June 11th, I would ask if there is business arising that it be referred to by the appropriate number attached to each item. Any business arising? Going once. This is going to move fast today, guys. Going twice. I got a feeling it must be summer. Last and final third call, like an auction. Do I hear it? Hearing none. All those in favor? Contrary-minded. Motion is carried. We have one piece of correspondence today. We have no proclamations today. We do have one piece of correspondence, which I think most of council, having reviewed it, would find it of some interest. It is a letter from the Honourable Member for the District of Harbour, Maine. And, of course, he is now the Minister of Environment and Conservation. That is the Honourable Tom Henderson. He is responding to a letter that we wrote regarding the norms or normally occurring radioactive material. And this dealt with the decontamination and temporary storage facility that was proposed for the city of Mount Pearl. Council will recall that at the time that this matter was being discussed here at the city, there had been some concerns because such a proposal had been put forward several years ago and had been rejected by the city. This was a second request. The matter went before the Department of Environment at the request of the city, and the department said they were going to strike a committee. And that committee would look at all of the aspects, both pro and con, if you would, on norms, the impact on the community, what regulations or safety requirements, et cetera, would be put in place if such facilities were to be allowed in what I would refer to as an urban business park, such as Donovan's. The subsequent request from council, as I recall, was that we asked that somebody from our city then serve on that committee. This letter is to tell us, quite frankly, that's not going to happen. The provincial government here According to the minister, it says the Environmental Protection Act includes provision for the appointment of an environmental assessment committee for projects that require an environmental protection review. Section 5.1 of the assessment regulation stipulates that members of this EA committee shall be employees of the government of the province or of Canada. Therefore, the legislation does not permit the appointment of a representative of the city of Mount Pearl as you have requested. Now, of course, what I just want to say, and it's too bad we don't have a reporter here, minister couldn't be more wrong, right, and his officials in that, because they don't seem to understand something. We are employees of the province. We are part of an order of government called the Province of Newfoundland and Labrador. So I suppose if we wanted to kick about it, we could have a field day with it, but I don't know that we need to turn it into a political football. But suffice it to say, we will not get to serve on that committee, which I do find a little bit unfortunate because I think there was an educational opportunity there for us as a city, as well as an opportunity to have input in the development of any regulations relating to this activity in the future. This goes to, I think some of you will remember the comment I made about whether we like it or not, we're in the oil business. I think it was a part and parcel of that reality. Anyway, anybody with any comments on it? Councillor Aker.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And, I don't think this is really a setback from our intention. The minister basically
it is not. It is not.
Following their guidelines and practically has invited us to participate in the process. So I would suggest that as a council, we would not necessarily show up necessarily to provide input, but perhaps we would probably ask Stefan Yevchuk, our Director of Planning, to take the lead if council feels that's most appropriate. We'll deal with it at the committee level here, I guess, for us politicians. And I was going to say Councillor Yevchuk, Director Yevchuk will be in a good position.
I did that to him once already. I demoted him to that task once already.
But the Director will be in a good position. He's very up to speed on the issue, as are many of us, and I think basically we'll have a chance to get their input, which would also give the city, Your Worship, the opportunity to demonstrate the zoning that's permitted in this area and why we feel the way we do. So this is a step forward. I guess we'll see this concluded in the next few months.
Councillor Stoyles, comment?
I was just going to say basically what Councillor Aker had said, but also a number of residents were certainly concerned about Donovan's and what could go there, especially when you look at the environment. I received a number of phone calls, and one particular phone call I received was from Gordon Cooper, who offered to help if we were to strike a committee ourselves or we need any input. He's an expert in the field and he has offered his services. I had mentioned it in committee of the whole, and he said any time the city is looking for any input or any information, he would only be glad freely to offer his services. Okay,
thank you very much. Any other comments from anybody? Hearing none, we will move along. The next item will be our Public Works Committee. Councillor Walsh is not here. Councillor Tessier, if you would.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first item on our agenda is the Household Hazardous Waste Day. Some information about our Household Hazardous Waste Day. It was held on June the 8th. We had 39 vehicles visit our depot to dispose of household hazardous waste items, batteries, paints, pesticides, oil, for example. The number of residents availing of this particular activity this year was a little lower than we have traditionally seen in the past. However, we also have to recognize that people do have the opportunity to take their household hazardous waste to Robin Hood Bay themselves. I believe they've extended their hours in Robin Hood Bay for such disposal. I don't know what the hours are, but that does make it a little more convenient. One thing that we hope is not happening is we certainly hope that people are not availing of the closed covers of the garbage carts to dispose of their household hazardous waste. We have to make sure that publicly people realize that there is a proper method of disposing of household hazardous waste material, and putting them in your regular daily garbage is not proper disposal methods. So we want to make sure that people recognize that they do need to be disposed of separately, that there is a process. If they have any questions at all, they have to refer to our website, or they can certainly call our Public Works Department, and we'll provide clarification for anybody who may or may not be confused about that. But that is for information purposes only.
Thank you.
The next item is our summer maintenance. Of course, our Public Works crews are working hard at, I hate to say post-winter, I even hate using the word winter, in June. but they're still, of course, cleaning up and taking care of our streets. The MADVAC is out along our trails and in the parks. Areas, hotspot areas like Old Placentia Road and Smallwood Drive, maintenance there, of course, is ongoing all the time. The garbage containers in the trail systems have been cleaned out. We are also sending out a reminder to residents that the garbage buckets that are in our trailway systems and in our open spaces in Mount Pearl are not to be used for daily garbage. That, unfortunately, does happen from time to time. We see full garbage bags of household garbage put in our trailway system receptacles, and that, of course, does block them up. That's not their intended purpose. They are meant for people who are out enjoying our beautiful trailway system, and if they need to dispose of a wrapper or something like that, they have the opportunity to do it. It is not, most certainly not intended for household garbage, so we want to make sure that people are reminded not to do that. We have received requests from residents to have animal refuse bags, of course, the poop and scoop bags. They have now been installed, is my understanding, along all some of the trailway systems.
Well, we only have 12, right?
They're now located at the dog park, Powers Pond Park. Is that Uyghur Bridge? What is that? Where is that? When I saw the name, I couldn't quite remember. Oh, the Forest Avenue Bridge. Well, that's Forest Avenue Bridge.
That's its name?
The bridge is in
right?
Memorial to John Wayne.
Is that right? Well, you learned something new. Yeah, you learned something new. Did anybody else know that?
Well, of course.
Oh, of course you did. Well, you know what? We'll remember it now.
But Jerry Antle, who was here to greet the first resident upon arrival, he would know that.
Well, you know what?
Yeah, his family, he engineered the bridge.
Yes. But we'll remember it now, which is
That's
great.
something we should highlight. I was not aware of that. I got to be honest with you.
Either.
That's
Me
good.
either.
That's
when
good.
I read it, I went, my goodness, what is that? Branscombe Pond, the Greenwood Trail at Dalton, by the Trailway entrance on Park Avenue, Commonwealth Avenue, and Corsan Drive. So, of course, we will remind everybody who's out walking with their pets to make sure that they are good citizens and that they leave nature as good as they found it and stoop and clean up after their pets, of course, after they've relieved themselves. Playfields and playgrounds are also in the process of being prepared for the start of the summer season. Street repairs are ongoing and snow clearing damages are being assessed, and lawn repairs are, of course, underway. I'm seeing it myself when I drive around town. It's wonderful to see it. Schools are now closed, so we are going to see more children playing in and around our parks and trails, and we're asking people to remind their children to not, if they see some kind of maintenance work or construction work happening within the city, to not go over where the heavy equipment crews are working. I mean, we all know the temptation of children with dump trucks and tractors and all that fun stuff. They all love it, but you must absolutely make sure that they stay clear of those large vehicles when they're in operation, for sure.
Councillor Aker with a comment.
I think the poop scoop idea, putting all the disposable bags in the trails, I think
Yeah, we need 4 times the number we got, but that's okay.
Yeah.
12 is a good start.
I heard from a resident, I think I sent it to committee, and the resident said basically, I like to walk my dog on the sidewalks on Park Avenue as well as Smallwood, right? So I didn't know if the committee had a chance to look at it, but the trails are a good place to have it. But she was arguing that maybe you need to have them on some of the streets too, because there's as many dogs, in her argument, many dogs are walked on the streets and the sidewalks as there would be on the trails. But to be realistic, I mean, a lot of people probably don't want a little scoop bag station right in front of their house, so where you'd put them might be a little bit, you'd have to be a bit selective. So I think the suggestion was on the entrance to Squires Field as well as the entrance to the Team Gushu.
Yeah, I would like to think that
people.
I would like to think that people who are walking a dog, councillor, and they're leaving their home with the animal are taking a bag with them.
I would think so.
I'm anticipating where a problem occurs is that number 2 has been done twice, and now they've got a problem. You know,
that happens.
and that happens.
That happens on sidewalks as much.
That
as
happens on sidewalks. I'm
that was her
assuming, but
point.
you know, you're near a door, it's easier to deal with. But I get your point, Councillor Ledwell.
Just to build on Councillor Aker's point, Your Worship, perhaps an idea might be to put them at the entrance to some of the trailways rather than along the sidewalks. Put them along where the trails meet the road, so that way you can sort of hit both streams of pedestrian traffic.
See, that's what got him elected. That's smart, right? And Mr. Antle, by the way, our senior citizen of Mount Pearl's historical records, he's nodding in agreement. I think that's a good idea.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Put them on the entrances to every trailway entrance. Let's put one.
We have a number of them located at those locations right now.
Now.
We can expand it and put additional out, but there are
Yeah.
most places there now in those locations.
So we've got 12 now, but obviously come next budget year, we're going to have to go after more, add another 12. Well, I guess we'll have to do it like that, sort of thing. One other little question I want to ask you about here, and this is in reference to what Councillor Tessier spoke about at the beginning of the report, the issue of the MADVAC, the street sweeper deployed on cleaning streets. We only have one, and is that correct? And I guess if our strategic plan is to carry the kind of weight it's supposed to carry, I think council is going to have to come to terms with we're going to need at least two. I don't know about other members of council, but I've received 2 complaints from people who are saying, I've never seen that thing. Now, they're understanding when you tell them, well, you know, we have 214 streets or something, and we only have one. I guess we've got to do something too. You know, yeah. So we've got to do something to deal with all of this stuff, you know? All right. I'm saying MADVAC as a street sweeper, but I'm talking about 2 different units? Yeah.
And I guess further to that, I mean, we've really undertaken a great public awareness campaign when it comes to cleaning up our city. We've expanded our 20-minute makeover times, and certainly if anybody wants to clean up their area, we're going to come pick it up anytime if they let us know when they've done it, because we're happy enough to do that. We've also undertaken a new awareness campaign, or at least I hope that we've started it now, with the Power Center over in the Pearlgate area as well, with some kind of solutions for the flyer debris that we generally
I want
see over
to
there.
actually, that's a good point that you make. I want the Community Services Committee, in particular with our law enforcement people, our municipal enforcement, to actually look at what enforcement levels are available to us to deal with what constitutes a flagrant disregard for litter in our community. I can't help but think that if we had the kind of authority necessary, we could have this stuff dealt with. It is terrible that at 7 a.m. on a Monday morning at the local Tim Hortons, I might as well name it, I won't identify which one, but at the local Tim Hortons, that you can't take a coffee cup that you've kept in your car for 2 days because you know you're going back and you're going to put it in the refuse there because it's overflowing. Stuff is rolling out onto the street. There's nowhere for it to go, and that's on a 7 o'clock on a Monday morning. Now, somewhere that's either a lack of intelligence on the part of management, right, which I don't believe to be the case. It's laziness on the part of the staff. It's just disorganization, I think, is what causes it. And somewhere there's got to be a punishment for that. Somewhere we've got to put a stop to that so that our flower beds and our gardens and the things across the street aren't full of litter. Right now, there is a flower bed across from the Wendy's Tim Hortons that is full of debris that came from Wendy's Tim Hortons. It's not like somebody went and dumped it there. You know, we can't ticket the wind, right? Unfortunately. But anyway, I just find it particularly frustrating. We're also proud of this city, and that stuff goes on. And I think the only way we're going to solve it is if some guy knows I'm going to get hit with a $5,000 fine. I'm going to get nailed here if I don't address this. You know, anyway, I want the committee to take a look at the rules around litter enforcement, and let's go after it. Sorry, carry on.
That's actually it for Public Works. I can stay on my feet and continue.
I think you may as well. Community Services report, that ties in quite nicely. Carry on.
The first item, of course, is the Memorial Day Parade and the Beaumont Hamel Wreath Laying. It's happening on July 1st. We are encouraging residents to attend the Legion Memorial Day ceremonies that are being held that day at the War Memorial site on Park Avenue at 11 a.m. This is a really well-attended event, and justifiably so. I mean, we all have learned all through the course of our school lives about the sacrifices that were made at Beaumont Hamel, and it's very, very important to our veterans and, of course, to our community as a whole that we continue to recognize those sacrifices. That is happening at 11 o'clock. The parade is commencing on the Church of the Ascension parking lot on Smallwood Drive at 10:30. So again, we're encouraging residents, young and old, to come out and certainly pay their respects on Memorial Day that day. The second item, the Mount Pearl Marlins had another great meet. The provincial lawn course, the Marlins placed second with some great personal best and star swims named. Congratulations are extended to Marlins parent John McKenzie, who won Volunteer of the Year. He's put in countless hours as an official and an executive member. Chris Roberts was nominated for Coach of the Year, and Becca Dyer for Swimmer of the Year. And I actually had the pleasure of attending the Marlins end of the year banquet on Friday night as well. And so many tremendous accomplishments were highlighted. So many provincial records have been broken this year by our Marlins. So many course records were broken by our Marlins. They had a large, what they call graduating class. Mount Pearl Marlins that I remembered when they got into the pool, they were like little bobbers years and years ago, and now they are graduating grade 12, and they will be, of course, graduating from the Marlins program themselves as well. Record breakers, names that we have heard here in this public chamber over the years for their accomplishments with the Marlins. So we wish them well in all of their future endeavors. And I know that they got a lot out of swimming with the Marlins. It's a real sense of community within that organization. And I also wanted to take a moment to acknowledge now their past president, Tammy Lahi. Tammy put in 8 years on the executive with Mount Pearl Marlins, and she poured her heart and soul into it. She started off in an executive position and ended up as president of the Marlins and did just a stellar job and always did a great job of letting us know as well with council the accomplishments of the Marlins. So we look forward to a strong and continued relationship with the Marlins. And let me tell you, they're pretty excited about that new pool. They're really looking forward to us turning on the tap. And I said none more than us.
I'm going to say they're excited.
Yeah, none more than us. We received a request from the Arena Board of Management for the third installment of their operating grant for 2013 in the amount of $32,000. So we're recommending approval to release this installment, and I so move.
Moved by Councillor Tessier, seconded by Councillor Stoyles. Question or comment? All those in favor? Contrary-minded? Motion is carried.
And speaking of great team efforts and team spirit, we want to congratulate the Pearlgate Track and Field Club and the Newfoundland and Labrador Athletics Association for the extensive work that they carried out during the provincial Hershey Track and Field that was held at Pearlgate on June 15th. 752 athletes from 33 schools across the province attended. We have to congratulate Caroline Kellaway and all of the organizers and all of the volunteers and executive members that came out that day. It was a wet day. It was a windy day, but it was warm. And I believe that most of council, if not all of council, were up there volunteering in some capacity throughout the course of the day. I know when Councillor Stoyles left the canteen, I went in and took it over, and I said, "Folks, are you serious?" But
the hot dogs were just starting. I had them all cooked.
Oh, I don't want to see another hot dog, I'll tell you. But it was a great event, and I heard very many people comment, people who were there on a volunteer level, parents who were there with their children, teachers who were there with their schools, comment on how well scheduled it was and how well organized it was.
Good for them.
I think the term was tickety-boo. Everything ran along tickety-boo. And given that many athletes, that number of people, and the weather, that's a great accomplishment. So we want to
the weather wasn't great that weekend, as I recall.
It was really not. It was not cold. It was warm.
Yeah, wet and drizzly.
Rain late in the morning.
Yeah. When I got there, it was still quite wet, but it wasn't cold. So you didn't see a lot of people shivering. You saw people who were just wet. But as the day progressed, it did get better. But anyway, they had a great meet, and we want to congratulate them.
Excellent. Thank you. That concludes the Community Services report as well. Moving on to the Corporate Services Committee. Again, we have Councillor Locke. Deputy Mayor Locke is not here today. Councillor Aker, if you would be so good.
Yes, sir. Thank you. There's only one item from Corporate Services. The invoices for council approval, and the amount is $281,804.18, and that's for you see 17 items listed there.
Yeah, I'm going to stop you now. Sit down again.
You're going to bypass?
I'm bypassing you. We're going back.
All you do is call the question, Your Worship.
Right? And we'll do that now in a second. You forgot, and so did I, and you even mentioned it at the beginning of the thing.
You know what it is? I'm so electric now. Like if it's not in front of me on that
If
machine,
it's not on the iPad,
right?
It doesn't exist. I apologize, Councillor Aker, to you. Councillor Tessier, to you as well, because I knew it was on the agenda. Carry on.
My apologies, Councillor.
This is Canada Day, I think.
We have two, actually.
Actually, two.
We've got the provision of bus services for the summer program of this particular summer. We received three bids, were received for the tender, and we are recommending approval to award the tender for the provision of bus services for the 2013 summer program to the lowest bidder, which is Executive Taxi, in the amount of $22,316.37, and that does include tax, and that does fall within budget, and I so move.
Moved, seconded by Councillor Stoyles. All those in favor? Contrary-minded? Motion carried.
Okay.
Thank you. Canada Day.
Canada Day. So Sunday, July 1st from 12 noon until 3 o'clock at St. David's Park. We are inviting, again, young and old alike to come out and participate in our Canada Day festivities. We've got entertainments and activities including Little Ray's Reptile Zoo. I'm going to stay away from that. Aerial performers Danielle Obo, I'm going to say, and Vincent Hannon. Music by Steve Collins, no stranger to city activities in Mount Pearl, he's wonderful, and Pat Moran. Organized games, inflatables, a huge birthday cake, face painting, barbecue, pins, flags, everything, you name it. Come dressed in red and white, show your pride.
All things Canadian.
For living in this fabulous country. Admission is a non-perishable food item. The rainy day site, of course, is the Reed Community Center. I know that last year we had a lot of people. Of course, it was a very, very busy day because it was a beautiful sunny day last year. We had a lot of people coming in from out of town to participate in this event because it was what a friend of mine called no money fun. You bring in your non-perishable item
No money fun. I like that.
No money fun.
That's a good line.
Yeah. You bring in your non-perishable at the gate and you have all kinds of fun. Your children will actually spend the whole day running around, being entertained, having just a blast, and all you have to do is support the food bank, which is just such a wonderful thing to do anyway. St. Vincent de Paul Society, I think. Anyway, I think that is it. Is that it?
Councillor, we thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Aker, we're back to corporate services. Have you already moved the motion on invoices?
Invoices 1 through 17, Your Worship, 281,000. I so move.
It is moved and seconded by Councillor Stoyles. I think you're alternate for everybody today, Councillor Stoyles.
Done it all anyway, she says.
Items 1 through 17, 281,000. Any questions or comments on anything attached to this at all? I see the landfill usage for the month of May. People wonder what happens to our garbage. $65,000 is what happens just for 1 month to deal with garbage. I was talking to the kids up at the school, you know, at not St. Peter's, at Newtown Elementary, and as well as up at Mary Queen of the World. And it was amazing when you asked them, do you know what the city does for you? They didn't know we do things like street lights and things of that nature and all that stuff. I look at some of these prices for repairs to traffic lights of $17,000. Dear God. And the Metro bus service for the month of May, $84,000. All right, that's over $1 million in the run of a year. If you had 12 times 84 grand, it's a lot. Anyway, just pointing those things out. We pay our bills. All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carried. That's it for corporate services today. Councillor, we're just paying the bills. Engineering Services Committee report, Councillor Ledwell.
Thank you, Your Worship. First item on our agenda will be very brief this evening. And of course, we start with the multiplex update. And I am very, very pleased to report that we are halfway to turning on the tap that Councillor Tessier referenced earlier. The project is now about 52% complete, and we are still very much on budget. And
why is the word financially put in this report and in parentheses? Project is 52%, parentheses, financially complete. Does that mean we got 52% of the money spent? Do we have 52% of the building built?
That would be exactly what it means, Your Worship.
We do not, says Councillor Randall, have 52% of the building built.
Well, it would mean that in terms of the progress payments that have been made to Marco, we have paid 52% of the money. I don't know that we've actually constructed 50% of the building, but we're right around there. We're not far off if we have.
Why is the director going, nah, what's that? What's that? How do you put that into the minutes? I don't know. You know, let the record show that there was an ambivalent arm wave from the director. But Councillor Antle, we'll make you a councillor today.
It wasn't a wave, it was more of a point. I was pointing to the microphone, actually.
All right.
That 52% is a measurement based on financial payments.
Right.
A lot of the multiplex is materials on site we're paying for. A lot of the components of that is actually equipment that's there. The air handling units are very expensive. A lot of the work in multiplex is underground, so a lot of the piping and the concrete work is done. So to say it's 52% complete, that's how we measure it financially.
Okay.
The building itself, well, we can see it. The structure is starting to take shape now. To say the building is halfway there, I'd say we're very close to that. A lot of that is materials on site and paid.
And financially, we're kind of on budget.
Yes, Your Worship, financially we are on budget. I guess I can't really say that we're halfway there. I suppose I can say that we're just about halfway there, but financially, yes, we've spent almost 52% of the money, so we're very much on budget, on course, and on course to complete it in summer of 2014.
We're going to wave a flag when we get halfway there?
You just did.
Well, we're going to do something in the end. Send out a news release or something and say, hey, look, we're halfway there.
Halfway there, we're getting there.
All right, Jerry, that's a job. You got to pinpoint that exact moment that we're halfway there. Which rivet makes it halfway? Yeah.
Just in addition, Your Worship, I just want to make note that 9 of our 11 wooden trusses have now been installed, and of course that sort of frames out the building. You can see the roof, and you can really see the look of the building as it stands right now. So things are going very well at this point with the multiplex construction.
On these composite trusses, there's a name on them. What is they called?
Glulam.
Glulam
trusses.
Glulam trusses.
That stands for glued and laminated.
Glulam stands for glued and laminated trusses. Okay, I have another question. I'm sorry, Councillor, but I have another question for Councillor Antle. Councillor Antle, a citizen asked me this. Those trusses look beautiful. In the finished building, will those trusses be visible? Thank God, because I just looked at the man bald-faced and lied and said, of course, not having no idea. That's why I had to ask. Right? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, they'll be visible, and in fact, you'll see wood on the whole upper ceiling of the multiplex. So you'll see the wood trusses. And between the wood trusses,
it's just a wooden ceiling tied in as well. It's going to be very beautiful.
Right, and when we call it a hybrid truss, it's a glulam truss. There's a steel structure right underneath the truss.
Yeah.
And that's how it's called a composite.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. Anyway, I just wanted to know, did I lie to the man or not? Apparently I didn't. Perfect. So go ahead. They look good, yeah. People are starting to talk to me about it now. It's looking like a building now, right?
It's looking like a building more and more every day, Your Worship. The second item on our agenda this evening has to do with our line painting, and of course residents will notice that the lines are currently in the process of being painted around the city. We're expecting that the line painting for 2013 will be complete within the next 3 weeks. Now, as Council is aware, we're in the midst of a 3-year contract when it comes to our line painting. Just recently, as part of that contract, there was a negotiation with the contractor and the city where we've negotiated a change order. We've changed the scope of the particular project. And Council, you'll see the impact of the change in the attached table here. Basically, you'll see that the change order, the resulting change of scope from the change order means that the contract price is increased by $82,660.25. Now, the reason for the increase, there's a couple of reasons actually. First and foremost, there's a change in the paint. Basically, to comply with federal government regulations, we now need to invest in paint with low volatile organic compounds, or VOCs. Secondly,
I'm impressed that you know that. You took the time to find that out. That's good.
Yes,
that's excellent.
I didn't do chemistry in high school for nothing.
For nothing. Oh, no. Come on! Somebody at the depot told you.
Yes, I do have to confess it was Director Antle who explained that to me this afternoon.
Councillor Antle, is that at the end?
Councillor Antle. In any case, the second reason for the difference is the increase in the size of the arrow. Some of the arrows and the markings, you'll notice that they're a bit larger, so that of course means more paint and more money.
Okay, and it's costing us $82,000 more.
Over the course of the 3-year
over the course of the whole contract.
That's right. So the committee has reviewed this information, and we're prepared to recommend that the change order be approved with the increase of $82,660.25, and I so move.
It has been moved and seconded by Councillor Stoyles. Question or comment from anybody? I have one, and it is in relation to Mount Carson. You remember last year when we put in, I want to call it it's almost like the markings of a median, that, and it worked so effectively in keeping what was obviously a traffic clash apart. That hasn't been done. The yellow piece, all the rest of the street seems to have now been painted, the lines going up, the direction arrows, but that particular piece going up has not been done. Is it slated to be done, or were we leaving it alone? It will be done, will it? Okay, thank you. Anybody other comment or question? All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carried. Thank you, sir. Planning Land Use Development Committee, is that where we are?
We are.
Councillor Aker?
Thank you, sir. 13 Seabright Place, we have an application for a driveway extension. Bit of a long-winded story about an application, a permit issued, and a permit expired, but at the end of the day, city staff went out to check a driveway expansion that was planned for a semi-detached house on Seabright Place. And basically, according to Regulation 1619.3b, 50% of the front yard can be a driveway. The other 50% has to be your front lawn. In this particular case, the proponent or the applicant wants to build a driveway so that he or she can accommodate two cars side by side. This purely does not work in this neighborhood. There's not enough width. But I might add, there is room for two-car parking if you
Yeah, they can go back to back.
They can still go back to back, right? So
yeah.
Basically, we're recommending that the application for the driveway extension be refused. Simply does not meet the city's regulations, and I so move.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. This was approved before, it says here, right?
A permit was issued to expand the driveway, subject to the 50% rule.
And okay, and they never did meet that rule, even in the earlier permission?
Well, I think the permission was a certain width of a driveway, which was not exceeding the 50%.
So our staff didn't go and look at it, is that what you're saying?
Not the first time, no.
Not
They
the first
normally, they wouldn't generally go up and look, but typically what would happen is the resident following up on a permit would request for some curb to be cut. And I think when the curb was going to be cut, this particular, I think it was this past spring, because this all drifted into winter, and this is how the permit expired. But I think when the curb was to be cut, or the request for the curb cutting came through, it was discovered that they were going beyond the 50%, and I believe then the planning department staff went up and had a look and said basically, it's okay to expand your driveway as long as you don't expand it to include more than 50% of the front of the property. So that's a bit of the history behind it. It kind of dragged out.
Mm-hmm.
We should look at a question.
All right, Councillor Stoyles?
Just in areas where there's townhouses and that, do we give flexibility in cases like that? That's my understanding, that in certain areas in the city, because there's not much room for parking, and especially where townhouses and that are built, we do give some flexibility in areas like this. And I'm just wondering, because at the area it is, and they have 40-foot lots, I'm assuming, maybe it's something we should be looking at to have some flexibilities, because most people have 2 and sometimes 3 cars. When your children grow up and have their own cars, it's certainly necessary, because you can't park on the street in the winter time, and so for 6 months or 5 months of the year there's nowhere for people to park, and we get a lot of complaints about people parking on their lawns and things like that. We don't want people parking.
Well, they've already, it's in the report that they've suffered lawn damage because they actually have people parking on the lawn. The only thing I would say to you, Councillor, that I observed, again in the written report, brought forward to the committee, as the regulations indicate that this is the regulation, about 50%, unless otherwise determined by council.
So I'm just wondering if it's something we can look at.
So that's a discretionary thing on our part, is it not, Councillor Aker? Is that what we're...
Well, I tell you, in my short time on council, we have approved at our discretion several times where there's townhouses, because typically today, many occupants of a house have 2 cars. So in the areas where there's townhouses, we've really had no choice. And if you drive up some areas, you will see lots of driveway and very little lawn. But we researched it in committee. There is no precedent out there for duplexes. If we approve this one, we set the precedent, and that will mean, in addition to townhouses, that will mean that all duplexes in the city, I'm not saying that they're going to get approved, but typically, we like to be consistent. We're bound by precedent. So as a committee, we're recommending we don't set that precedent. We don't open the floodgate. Keep in mind, Your Worship, that the occupant of the house can still park 2 cars from the curb
back to back
through to the back of the house.
If we approved it, if we used the discretion of council to let it happen, then the other attached tenant in the other building, if they made application that they wish to extend and have a double driveway as well, then you're in a situation where you would have low back and pavement throughout the entire. There would be no garden whatsoever. There would be no landscaped area at all. Is that my understanding of what would happen here? Councillor Yefchak.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. No, in the case of these, first of all, I just want to make it very clear. These are semi-detached units. They're not townhousing. So the requirement under the regulations is we limit the amount of landscaping or driveway to 50% of each part of the lot or the unit. In the case of this unit and the one next to it, if they have their parking stall, if they remove their grass for another parking stall, they will have some landscaping, but it's going to be very limited. It'll be a very small area of landscaping. Most of the parking stall will be basically in front of the dwelling unit. So no, it wouldn't all be totally paved, but it'd be a very small piece of landscaping. Matter of fact, it'll probably be a situation where over the years, the landscape area will probably be affected by
just subsumed into the parking. In reality, is what would happen. It's so tiny.
And the other issue at this point, in that cul-de-sac there, that has not occurred to any other unit at this point in time. So if council uses their discretion, then who knows, maybe more requests.
That being the case, if there's any other comments, if not, you may close debate. Councillor Aker, will I call the question?
We were leery about setting a precedent because typically with the townhouses, council has already established through multiple discretionary decisions that in effect there is a de facto regulation that say you can expand your driveway to include more than 50% of your front yard. We've never done it with the semi-Ds or the duplexes. I don't think anywhere in the city. So for that reason, we weren't too keen on approving this one. As a committee, council can chart their own course. But at the same time, if we approve this now, we feel like we're setting a precedent for all the duplexes in the city. And I so move.
I'm ready to call the question, but your seconder now wants to speak with leave of council. Go ahead, Councillor Stoyles.
Not my seconder.
Well, I just
you're not your sorry. She's been seconding everything today.
If I don't mind, if
No,
council
I was just going to say maybe what I think maybe we should do is take it back and have a look. And I don't know if everybody has gone up and looked. I was up in the area, and I really don't see a problem with putting the extra driveway in. And most of the time in an area...
But did you look at it from putting two extra driveways
I did, and most times in areas, sometimes it's just a couple there and they're not even looking at doing it, and it's not always... When you look at a neighbourhood, and I've drove around London Drive and around the townhouses the past weekend, and I was looking at the areas where we did allow people to put the double driveway in, and they're far and few between. Most people want to keep their lawn. If they don't need it for a driveway, they don't bother. 99% of the time is nobody else is going to go look it up in that neighbourhood. And if there is one other person in that neighbourhood looking to do it, I would like for us to take it back and have another look and even do a study or just do some kind of a little survey with the neighbours and see how many of them would like to have a second driveway. And maybe it's something we really need to look at. People really need a place to park their second or third car. And even though they might be able to go back for 2 cars, maybe they got 3 cars. And I really would like to see us do something in cases like this.
So you're making a motion? You're making an amendment? You're asking that this item be deferred?
To have it deferred, yes.
Do we have anybody willing to second the motion to defer? Well, right now you have a motion on the floor. Anybody want to second the motion to defer? Hearing none, the motion is lost. Back to the main motion. Now that I've let Councillor Stoyles speak, I've opened the floor again. Oh, mercy me. Councillor Ledwell.
Your Worship, I'll be brief. And I just want to touch on Councillor Aker's point there about, we need to look at the character of the neighbourhood. When you drive up on Farrell Drive, what have you, or on the bottom part of Michener Avenue, you see a neighbourhood where there is a significant percentage of townhouses. And in that type of an environment, that type of neighbourhood, that flexibility that Councillor Stoyles is referring to is certainly, we could see that happening there. But when we're talking about a cul-de-sac with semi-detached dwellings, duplexes, I don't believe that on that particular cul-de-sac there are any other properties that have that kind of an expanded driveway. So in my view, especially given that the proponent, the resident there can now park 2 cars back to back in their driveway, I would think that would be sufficient to have there, and I don't see how we can circumvent our regulation that details that we have to have 50% landscaping on that property.
Thank you. Any other final thoughts? Okay, Councillor
Close debate.
Aker, closing debate. Go ahead. You want to close debate?
I just chatted with the director because one of the things we have to be careful with is consistency in our decisions. So there's a rationale here. You can still park 2 cars, stacking them into your driveway and go along the side of the house. But I asked the director, I said, like, in the past 12 months, have we had other people come to us and ask that the driveway be allowed to be expanded horizontally, let me say? And we've turned them down. Now, that wouldn't have come to council because generally if someone called us up, we would have just said over the phone, no, it would mean that you violate the rule. So we've already told several people this year, and I'm sure over the years we've had this request. In this particular case, this refusal, there was a formal application, and I believe the applicant may be planning on appealing it, so this is why we're talking about it publicly. Ordinarily, we wouldn't, but...
Ordinarily, this would have been handled through the routine handling of these matters by the department.
Yeah. But now to Councillor Stoyle's point, we can, I prefer we vote on the motion, the original motion, and we can still take it back to committee and we can still look at it, and we can look at the number of semi-Ds that we have in the city. We can look at the number of applications we have. Firmly believe, I don't want to be too entrenched in my position, but the committee's looked at it and we think this is setting a precedent. So if we open up the box, so be it. But I'd like to move.
The other side of it.
Hold on. We're carrying on again then? We're opening debate again?
I'm not debating.
Well, I'm afraid, yes, you are. Anyway, council gives you leave. Go ahead.
The point I want to make is that we have people who put in application for such expansions of their driveways and have been refused, but they put in the request because of a further development they want to make on their house, and they've had to modify their development as a result.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had people make some pretty extensive decisions probably when it comes to their own properties because of our regulation, and that's fair. So I guess I'm supporting right now the recommendation of the
Well, yeah, I'm supporting the recommendation. The reason that it's come to us is so that the applicant will, as a result of our actually taking this vote, will then automatically have the right to appeal to the Regional Appeal Board the decision itself if they feel they've been treated unfairly. Fair enough. So that's what we're going to do then.
So why don't we call the motion and also take it back as...
I think that's, I happen to agree with Councillor Stoyles to a degree that there's something here that needs to be looked at about the reality of our changing housing environment. When you think we have 340 some odd condos being built right now, and we're going to get a lot more of these semi-Ds. We're going to get a lot more of in-law apartment buildings and dwellings and things in our lives. So it might be, that parking standard may have to be looked at, or landscape standard. Having said that, I am going to call the question. All those in favor of refusing this application for the driveway extension at 13 Seabright Place indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary-minded? 1 nay recorded. Motion is carried.
Thank you. The next item from the Planning Committee is a Mount Pearl Municipal Plan Amendment number 5, as well as the Mount Pearl Development Regulations Amendment number 18 for the year. Wow, it's been a productive year. The motion is that basically we adopt these amendments. It has to do with property at the bottom of Farrell Drive at the corner of Thompson Road, and we would like to change the municipal plan designation from general commercial to mixed use, and the zoning from general commercial, or commercial general I should say, to commercial mixed, so that we can allow basically an automotive display and sales business there. This previously was a retail-oriented.
It used to be Green Superette at one point in our history, wasn't it?
Green got his start at the bottom of.
Isn't it right? That's what it was.
You know.
Yep.
Yeah. You could always buy certain things there.
I wondered what was going to happen. That building was getting pretty shabby. You know.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay.
We have a request to redevelop that building, and we need some zoning and municipal plan amendments. Municipal Affairs has released this amendment, and the motion is to adopt the amendment number 5 and amendment number 18, appoint Jody Saunders as commissioner for the public hearing, and schedule that public hearing on July 17th, 7 p.m., Mount Pearl City Hall.
Moved by Councillor Aker, seconded by Councillor Ludwell. Question or comment? All those in favor? Contrary-minded? Motion is carried.
Now we have a referral here as the next item. It's from the City of St. John's, which is common practice, where all the municipalities where their borders meet when there's some development occurring. They're proposing an amendment to the City of St. John's municipal plan as it pertains to a proposed industrial commercial park on Kenmount Road. we see no impact on the city of Mount Pearl. It's essentially across the street from our Kenmount Business Park, and then a little bit further north, I would say. The department has no issue with it, and I'd like to move endorsement.
Second.
Really?
I think one of the
They are going to, the amendment that they're proposing is to accommodate an industrial park with on-site services until such time as municipal water and sewer services are available to the site. They're going to use septic in the middle of this urban center. We're not going to say something about that. We turned down two churches.
our standards are different
Because
Our
they couldn't
standards
flush a toilet into the main sewer system. We're going to let these guys build a friggin' industrial park and not say anything about that? I don't know, Mr. Yefchak. I gotta
This
ask you: is this something that's on our radar, or are we just saying we have no
this
comment
issue
on
did come
what
up
they're
in
proposing to do?
This issue did come up in committee.
Did it? Good. What?
Your Worship, in recent years, we've noticed, and we've actually commented, well, we haven't commented on it, but there's now been a number of developments at St. John's in recent years have approved. They're outside of the municipal water and sewer system areas, and they've been proposed to be on-site well and septic tank systems until such time the services are extended into those areas.
We're opening schools. There's a school next to them and stuff. Really?
Just for Your Worship, you're correct. Actually, where they're going next to is right now a self-storage mall. If you recall, on Kenmount Road, there's a large one there. That's on well and septic tank as well. Now, the amount of sewage a self-storage mall generates is very limited. Depending on what the uses will be in this industrial park, I guess will depend on the amount of demand on water and wastewater. But this is something that St. John's has been doing recently in a number of locations, and this happens to be across the street from the city of Mount Pearl. The only outside of the issue of water and sewer services, and as Councillor Akers said, we probably go to a higher standard than St. John's does at this point in this area. But the only real issue from our perspective is our access road into the Pearlview West area is in the same area as this subdivision, and as long as they design the subdivision to keep that in mind, because it's going to be a subdivision with actual traffic lights or a road connection with traffic lights, and they'll need a separation distance. Then other than that, we don't see an issue unless council wishes to comment on the water and sewer situation.
Well, I haven't. Let's not kid ourselves. I have no particular objection personally to the development of another business park or an industrial park, be it in St. John's Paradise or here. I take into account specifically the comments relating to the road network and the connection. This is something that Dennis O'Keefe himself is yelling about all the time, isn't it? About a strategy for regional roads and all of that kind of connection. But I do have to say I would like any comment that we are going to make to forcefully point out to an urban center the size of the city of St. John's that it should not engage in what is in reality a little bit of a backward kind of view of development. And in the middle of a huge urbanizing area of this magnitude, to say we're going to let people put in industrial buildings and build sewer systems, build septic into it, instead of seeing to it that they expand the sewer network? Because let's realize something here. We're all now screaming at what happens when we start development on all of that land, which we simply refer to in our report as the forested area on the Mount Pearl side of that highway, which we want to see buildings on. We won't put anything there unless there is a sewer system in.
You turned them down.
We turn down people as a result because they're not close enough to the main sewer network. So there is a competitive disadvantage that we create for ourselves as a result of that. We must either change our own rules to say we'll be just as Wild West as you, or we have to make a statement to the city of St. John saying this is retrograde, this is backward.
No question.
That's just my opinion. I don't know if other councillors would agree or not. But anyway, question, Councillor Tessier.
Of course, this is protocol to go out to the neighboring municipalities for commentary with a situation like this. I wonder, has the city of St. John's ever received such an application from an area for unserviced development, and replied with that exact same concern.
I have no idea. I would imagine it might be worth researching. I don't know, but I do think that within any commentary, and I'm pleading with the Planning Committee to accept this recommendation, that when we file our report, I have no disagreement with the recommendation at all, other than in the body of our report when we say we have no objection to the proposed amendment, I think we actually do, and that has to deal with the sewer system. I think, Councillor Stoyles.
I totally agree with you, Your Worship. I think, especially when we turned down at one of the churches.
We've turned down two.
We turned down two, but one in particular came to us and sort of said when the sewer system came in, they would reconnect to it. They wanted to put in their own
septic
system. They wanted to put their own septic in, and they were willing to sign a document saying that when we put in the water and sewer, that they would connect to ours and take out their system. They were even willing to put that in writing. So I totally agree with you that we should certainly mention that in our comments and let them know our feelings on it.
So that would be the only. I don't know if it needs an amendment to the motion.
I make that amendment, and if you need
but I think that we should look at actually making that commentary. Councillor Aker, any other thought on that?
Am I closing debate or?
Well, actually, Councillor Stoyles is asking that we change the motion to read that we do have an objection to the development of the park if they are going to move forward with a sanitary system that involves being put on septic.
Do we have an objection, or do we wish to place a qualification on our approval? Are we outright saying no, we do not want it there, or are we saying there is no direct impact on the city of Mount Pearl, but we have concerns for this level of development, this standard of development?
In this area.
Which one are we saying?
That's what we're saying. We have a concern for this standard of development. We have no authority or power to stop them. I think what it does, though, is it forces us, because the lands that we're trying to deal with above the 190, I think it forces us to reduce our standards.
So may I suggest we would still write the letter with no objection, but what we could do is implore upon them that we feel that the standard that's being used is inconsistent with what they're seeing in the
entire region, which is what they're pleading about.
Yes, in the entire region.
I think before it goes out, Mr. Yevchik, it might be worthwhile for council to have the opportunity to review the commentary, but I understand how Mr. Aker intends to have it written. I don't disagree with the approach.
Well, what we can do is we can defer it from today. We can have a draft done up, including the qualification. We can bring it back in 2 weeks' time. That's no trouble.
That'd be better.
Yeah.
That would be better. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So you're going to defer?
Yeah. Well, you moved it.
I'll withdraw the motion.
Treasurer seconded. We're all in favor of the deferral. So.
Okay. Now, folks, just bear with me as I catch up to you. Conservation Use Zone Amendment pertains to an amendment we want to allow certain structures and roadways to be allowed in the conservation use zone, what they call the flood risk corridor. We had a public consultation process which was initiated. Notice the motion on May 30th. A briefing session was scheduled for June 18th. We advertised it. We received no written submissions in relation to this proposed amendment. I believe we have a couple of locations in the city. One is in Dunnemans. Now, I want to note for council, we're not, when we say structures, we're talking about things like roads and bridges and driveways. We're not talking about buildings.
We're not talking about inhabitable structure.
No, not at all. Right? It's two locations. One is in Dunnemans, and another is over here along Commonwealth Avenue in the southern part of the city, as it enters the St. John subdivision, known as I think it's Castle Bridge or Castle Haven, one or the other. Brookfield Plains, we'll call it. There you go. And some of the parking in that area may have to overlap or be placed on top of the flood corridor.
Yeah, these are things that I would think would be acceptable.
They would seem to be reasonable. The only thing is our regulations right now will not allow it, and this is why we have the.
So this will clean that up.
But will the property owner assume responsibility if there's any kind of flooding issue and damage to personal property? If somebody parks a car on it, for example.
Well, I think there'll have to be measures taken to deal with. In this case, over here on Commonwealth Avenue, basically it's a riverbed and associated banks, right? So there is a danger then during a very, very high flood time. There's a danger some of the water may spill over onto the parking lot. Now, I'm not an expert, but we would not be anticipating that danger basically would cause any damage to something like a vehicle or whatnot. I think the biggest concern is that you make sure you have not reduced or eliminated the capacity of the waterway to be able to move the water. And I'm assuming that despite this amendment, any proposal that comes to the city to develop the parking lot as well as the building will have to take that into account.
Do we know, I'm going to ask Director Yefchek again, Councillor Tessier points the finger at a very interesting point here. Is there, by making this change, any liability that could be attached to the city as a result of somebody having their personal property on a parking lot that we approved in a flood zone, and it gets flooded and the car gets flooded and so on?
Your Worship, I guess a point of clarification. Any approval that we will make in this year will be subject to the approval by the Department of Environment and Conservation. So they will take a look at that as well. And I just want to point out that we have an area. I'm trying to think of the name of the street. Clyde, I think it's Clyde in Donovan's, where we have a conservation corridor along the edge of the street.
Yeah.
And we have about 8 driveway accesses that over a culvert go into the property. The actual properties behind I'm going to say the engineered tributary of the Waterford River. Legally, those are all non-conforming uses because they exist and they're there. This amendment, well, first of all, recognizes those type of uses as uses that could be permitted here. And secondly, the inquiries that we have had outside of access into properties, the parking areas have been really more in the buffer and not in the flood zones themselves. So they're on the edge, and in conversations with other municipalities and with the department, it's not unusual for the department to allow these parking lots to be part of the actual 15-meter buffer. So really, this is kind of where we're coming from with the amendment. In terms of liability on private property, that is something I guess I don't have a comment to make because I really don't know. It'd be something we have to take a look at if indeed there's a concern by council on this.
I think it's a question that we need an answer to. It's not anything. It wouldn't stop me from voting for this, but I'd like to have that answer if the legal beagles out there could give us a letter. Okay, we'll call the question then on it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary-minded, motion's carried.
Now, the next item, I believe, is the Commercial General Apartment Building Amendment. We went through a public consultation process, started off with a notice of motion on May 30th. Again, on June 18th, a briefing session was scheduled as well as advertised. We've received no written submissions as relates to this, and this simply allows your worship and council that in the commercial general zone, we can allow an apartment building. So, and this is to accommodate some future developments. I wanted to add that some of these changes we're making to our regulations, we sometimes get bogged down in the specific development, but this is not what we're trying to do here tonight. We're not trying to approve a particular development or a building or a parking lot. We're just trying to get the zoning right to subsequently be able to handle an application, which is then subject to all the other regulations, including a review by engineering, as well as by the province, if that's applicable, right?
And it would be a public hearing. If there was a development permit to come in that area, there would also be a public hearing, or would there be?
Automatically?
Once we change the zone,
We're not changing the zone.
We're not
changing the zone. We're allowing another activity to occur inside the zone.
Right. Currently, if you're in the commercial general zone, it would not allow an apartment building.
Okay, but that doesn't answer Councillor Stoyle's question.
No, I agree. Yeah.
If we now say that apartment building is allowable, does that take any either discretion away from council or the public consultation process? Does it get lessened because now it's an approved activity, if you will, within the zone table?
Right.
Mr. Yefchek.
Sorry for standing up again, Your Worship. But actually, the reason for the amendment is that we did receive an inquiry about a multi-story apartment building in the commercial general use zone. And at first we said that type of development is not permitted. But when we go to our municipal plan, it does say that apartment buildings may be permitted in appropriate areas of general commercial designation. So a plan actually recognized that they may be allowed. Our zoning regulations, though, did not recognize that at all. So what we've done is we've gone through a process to amend the development regulations to comply with our plan, and when the word may is in your plan, that automatically makes it a discretionary use in your use zone table. So in answer to
okay,
Councillor,
yes, so the answer would be yes, it
Councillor
doesn't
Stoll.
lessen any of that,
correct, you will always have
that commitment to public consultation.
correct.
Okay, because it's may, not shall.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Apartment
So it will be a
building.
public hearing.
Apartment building is being added to the list of discretionary uses.
Yes.
Not permitted
Yep.
uses,
No,
which is another
still,
class, right?
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Good point.
Still, good
Yeah.
question.
So as long as the residents, the people living there have a right to speak out and be heard.
Yeah.
That's my concern.
Anytime we use our discretion, I believe we invoke our public consultation process, which would typically lead us to a briefing session.
Perfect.
We will call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carried.
Notice of motion, Your Worship, in accordance with Section 39, City of Mount Pearl Act 1988, take notice that in accordance with Council's public notification policy, I will, at a regular meeting of Council, move an amendment to the text of the Mount Pearl Development Regulations. Hang on now. I apologize.
Yeah, we've got that. That's
That
only.
was the old motion. I didn't give my fingers an extra flick. Sorry about that. The next thing is number 5, alternate landscaping for front yard. There is a notice of motion coming up.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
14 Sampson Street. Basically, the resident up there basically took out all their lawn last year. They've replaced it with colorful. I think it's a purple type colored crushed stone, and did that to the front yard of the property at 14 Sampson. Basically, the city staff have been up to review it. It doesn't meet the city's guidelines as it pertains to landscaping. The department and the committee are recommending that we issue an order to have the gravel and the stone removed and reinstated with 150 millimeters of topsoil and sodded grass. Essentially, I don't know if there's any pictures with this particular one, but the pictures I've seen, the front yard looks basically like a parking space, basically. There is a couple of tree plantings there. Generally speaking, we only will vary from our requirement for sodded landscape if a plan is approved by a landscape architect. And Your Worship, I believe the rationale for that is that it's hard to establish what would represent a nice landscape as in lieu of a lawn. So the best way to put that into action is to have a landscape architect sit down and do it up. And I know the resident tried to do this with a bit of good faith. I think he mentioned to me that he talked about going to a company that supplies the stone, and he asked for architectural stone. But in this particular case, that doesn't necessarily mean it's an architecturally designed landscape. I think there's a couple of shrubs there. I think there's even some flower boxes being put in as we speak. But I want to caution everybody that people who have landscape front lawns with grass and the like, they put flower boxes in. So the mere fact that you put a flower box there or a couple of shrubs does not make it a nice landscape front yard. So basically, in accordance with our regulations, I'd like to move that we issue an order. I think the purpose of issuing the order is to go on the record. I do believe the resident will be appealing our decision, and I so move.
Question, Your Worship.
Councillor Stiles.
I'm just wondering how many of those we have. I know I've been at this location. I know this location, but I'm just wondering. I know there was another one just off of Mount Carson Avenue. I can't remember the name of the street now. I think it's Dunluce. That there's one like it up there, and I know one of my neighbours had done it, and the following year he, did his lawn again because he didn't like it himself. And I'm just wondering, how many of those do we have? Or, I'm assuming there must be others around the city that is approved.
I think I know of one or two.
I know a number of them that. I know several of them that's been there, and I'm just wondering if they came and got approval and they had landscape artists do it, and or what the case was, because I mean, I guess it's one's eye and how they like looking, what they like looking at. But I know we have a standard, and that, and I understand that. But I mean, I had been over there just several weeks ago, And yeah, I'm just wondering how many others we have.
Mr. Yevchek, I can't answer that off the top of my head. I wouldn't know. Mr. Yevchek?
Your Worship, I was going to say the same thing. We know that there's several in the city. We don't have a number to provide you. We could certainly do a quick survey and let you know.
I think we should.
I just want to remind Council that this requirement about the alternative landscaping is one that Council brought in several years ago, and Councillor Stoyles is quite correct. It had to do with a person who didn't want any front lawn, grass sods in the front lawn of our property in the Mount Carson Terrace area, I believe, and Council did allow an alternative form of landscaping subject to some standards, because the fear by Council was that we would get a standard of front yard landscaping that might be of a less standard than grass sods and trees and shrubs. So that's why there was the additional requirement put on it. In the case of this individual in this situation, we have received at least one complaint, if not more than one complaint, from the neighbors in the neighborhood about the condition of the property.
So that's why it's here.
I do want to go look at it. I have not. I want to go look at it. But anyway, having said all of that,
sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, in just summing up, that Councillor Yevchek is quite right. Basically, if you allow this crushed stone lawn to continue, you will see more of it. And from the feedback I've gotten from some of the residents up there, there's not many people really like the look of it. I do encourage you, though, Your Worship, to take a run by, as I would to everybody on Council.
I think I'll do that.
My first impression when I saw this last year was basically, from not too far away, is that basically the whole front yard was a driveway. Some of it crushed stone and some of it was paved. No different than the issue with the duplexes. If we have a standard in the city, we need to, at the end of the day, see if we can abide by that standard. So again, we go back to, if Council wants to make the exception here, well, that's not going to be pleasing to all the residents in the neighborhood, and we do set a precedent here in the city. I think clearly this one, some of these these alternative landscape lawns, as Councillor Stoyles said, it's the beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? But this one here does not meet a good standard whatsoever, and I guess that's in my judgment, and I encourage all of you to look at it. Do you want to defer this one too, or do you want to vote on it?
No, I think we just go ahead.
Go ahead.
And vote on this. That's my feeling.
I've made the motion.
I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion is carried.
Now, notice of motion.
Now you got the right one.
In accordance with Section 39, the City of Mount Pearl Act 1988, take notice that in accordance with Council's public notification policy, I will, at a regular meeting of Council, move an amendment to the text of the Mount Pearl Development Regulations 2010 that, if enacted, will, in Section 11, use zone schedules, more specifically in the use zone schedules for city centre, light industrial, and community and public service, Part A would be under permitted uses subcategory public, add open air assembly use, subject to Regulation 7.2, in alphabetical order to the list of permitted uses, and B, where necessary, re-letter existing public permitted uses to accommodate the alphabetical addition as noted above. And 2, in Section 11, the use zones, more specifically in the use zone schedule for open space, Part A, under permitted uses, following the subcategory recreational and prior to the subcategory other, add a new category public, and under that subcategory add open air assembly use, subject again to Regulation 7.2. The purpose of this amendment is to provide Council with the authority to permit outdoor worship services in the land use zones specified above, subject to meeting the conditions for the type of use as specified in Section 7, Special Developments, Regulation 7.2 relating to open air assembly uses. Catch my breath.
Thank you, sir.
June 10th to the 21st development permits are there, numbers 30 through 33, and I'd like to move them as well.
Moved, seconded, all in favor? Contrary minded, motion carried.
The building permit list that you see here today for residential, the total is $877,150, and I so move.
Moved and seconded, all in favor? Contrary minded, motion carried.
And coming in at the end is the commercial building permits in the amount of $19,000, and I'd also like to move.
Moved, seconded, all in favor? Contrary minded, motion carried.
That's it, thanks.
And we move on. That concludes committee reports. We're up to new business. We're going to mix it up again today. Ladies first today. Councillor Tessier. We're going to go back and forth now this week.
All right. First item for me with new business. Our flower pots are now out.
Yes, they are.
And all our mediums. They look fantastic. And
When are we going to get our committees, our groups out there, our volunteer groups, to take on a flower pot?
We'll assume a flower pot. Not this year.
Okay,
Not this year.
well, it was a nice thought.
Yeah.
That got shot down in a hurry.
Not this year.
Don't you think, though, a community group would be nice, right? These flower pots, the Lions, the Canets, the Kinsmen,
Yeah.
the Knights of Columbus.
That's definitely something that would require specific protocol and regulations to make sure that safety is adhered to, that maintenance is adhered to as well, the city standards are being adhered to as well. Now, I know there's a lot of community groups that would do a stellar job with our pots, make no mistake.
Yeah, but, okay, anyway.
But for the purpose of new business, I want to extend kudos to the contractor and, of course, to our city staff. We have staff that are in charge of oversight of the delivery and the maintenance of these pots. So we know that last year our summer was just totally lovely, and those flower pots were just in large flourishing bloom all year or all summer and well into the fall, and so we want to hopefully anticipate the same kind of success with that again this year. This has been a tough couple of weeks actually for the city of Mount Pearl and for people that we know. We've had several people pass. Walter Butt, councillor in Pooch Cove, friend to all, and I think everybody in the province knew who Walter Butt was. It's a funny thing, like we hear of councillors and we go, oh, who were they and were they on? But with Walter Butt, everybody knows who Walter Butt was. And he passed away, and I know that we have certainly all shared and respected Mr. Butt, Councillor Butt, and we want to express condolences to his family. Keith Keating, Adam Keating was the Male Youth of the Year in Mount Pearl, and Keith passed away after a very, very courageous battle with cancer. We've had the opportunity to share his company on several occasions as a council when Adam was Male Youth of the Year. Lovely man. Tremendous loss for their family. Kim Mosher, one of our own staff, her father passed away. Major Hayward Noseworthy passed away recently. Bernice Mercer's father-in-law passed away over the last couple of weeks. And of course, our very own Sonia Lehman. Sonia, I mean, I said to her sister yesterday morning on the phone, her sister Ina, for such a little person, Sonia made such a big mark on the city of Mount Pearl. And I know that other members of council are certainly going to want to express condolences for these people and their passings as well. Sonia was, I can't even imagine what Frosty's going to be like actually this coming year without her. She will be tremendously, tremendously missed and thought of very often.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stoyles?
Thank you, Your Worship. I too want to express my sympathy to Sonia Lehman and her family, Walter Butt's family, and Keith Keating and the other Mr. Noseworthy's family, and as Councillor Tessier had mentioned, it seems like every week we've been going to more and more funerals and wakes and services, and when you lose so many good people in our community, it certainly takes a bit out of everybody when they're at funeral homes on a weekly basis. So I certainly want to pass along my sympathies to these families as well. But Your Worship, I also wanted to bring up something tonight. I know it's something we normally don't do very often, but I want to put a request in tonight and would leave the council. I don't know if we will do anything on that, but we all heard of the tragic flood in Alberta, and we've gone through an awful lot over the past number of years here when we had EGO and we had things, and Alberta was going through a tremendous a lot of, and the Canadian Red Cross has played a big part in it, and I know we have a group of Newfoundlanders gone up. One of our own, Christine Cave, is in Alberta as we speak for next 2-3 weeks, doing work with the Red Cross.
Is that M&L's Christine Cave?
M&L's Christine Cave.
Okay.
She's been part of the Red Cross disaster.
Good for her.
And she's up there, and I'm just wondering if maybe, I know when stuff happened here in the province, we all jump on board and help, but Alberta is one of our own provinces, and it'd be nice to see us and other councils come forward and do something. They're looking for people to contribute to the Red Cross, and I think it maybe either bring it back to committee and have a look at it, or see if we can see. I'd like to see us do something in this case.
I think we'll take it back to committee. I find it interesting that you bring up a very good point. Alberta's considered the rich sister in all the whole country, so we're not as quick, I don't think, to raise our arms to help. The flood that they've encountered in the Calgary area is an absolute disaster. I had an opportunity today to listen to President Barack Obama talking about new initiatives to bringing in to deal with climate change. One of the things the city of Calgary actually did was they brought in a series of bylaws to allow for development in the flood zone. And they've done that over the last 15 years. Hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of damage being experienced in the city today was a direct result of bad decision making back then, when they were under such tremendous pressure to develop. And they found this land to be the place to go. And of course, it came back, I think it's fair to say, the haunt. We're in the middle of moving people out of our flood zone, which I think is a much smarter decision-making process on our part. Get them out of there and as far away from the realities of our new flood zone as you possibly can. But
so I'd like to take something back to the committee.
I would agree with you. I think our finance committee should really take a look at it. Corporate services, community services, maybe talk to somebody with the Red Cross. The question is, how can we help? And let's be honest, cash is king. That's how we can help. You know, so many Newfoundlanders in Alberta. I don't know how we can.
I think they're taking it to the board meeting. I think they will be looking. They haven't decided yet because it came on, but they have given Christine leave to go for several weeks. I'm sure she will be, paid while she's away.
Well, that's the problem we've run into at other times. That's why you got to take it back. We got to take a look at it in a more holistic or universal view than just what
most of us have family in Alberta, and we've been hearing the horror stories and that as well. Yeah. So every time you go anywhere, the past weekend, such and such a son or daughter was evacuated or whatever. So it's our families as well, because a lot of them moved to Alberta. So I certainly would like to see us do something.
Okay, we will take it back.
All right, I have a couple of other things, Your Worship, and of course the Sports Alliance had their year-end barbecue last week, and they
good barbecue.
There was a great barbecue, and Wayne Andrews and Everett Russell was both presented with plaques and special awards, thanking them for all the work that they had done with the Sports Alliance. Also, Your Worship, the Chamber of Commerce had their AGM this past week as well, and myself and Councillor Ludwell was at that representing council, and they have some new people on the board, and I will pass along their package and their new board members and that to council, so we can send off something to them. And our own Brandon Elwood sits on that committee representing our council. Also, Your Worship, I was asked to mention a lady with Special Olympics, Bev Barber. They're doing a fundraiser for her on the 13th of July at Paradise Bowling Alley from 9 to 11, and all the money they raise that evening at the bowling alley, apparently the bowling alley is donated, and everything they raise that night will go to Bev, and she's been involved with Special Olympics here in Mount Pearl for a very long time. Also, Your Worship, a new company opened up in Glenhill Plaza. They serve frozen yogurt, Munchies, I think it's called, and I was up to the official opening on Saturday, and a lovely little spot. They have an outdoor little cafe as well, tables and chairs set up out around, and I have to say, a really nice little spot, and wish them well. And the last thing I have, Your Worship, is going back to the garbage that we had talked about. This past couple of weeks I've been up in Masonic Park and meeting with a number of the residents, and the biggest complaint I have from the residents up in Masonic Park is the debris of the construction site, all the houses, no homes being built up there. There's been all kinds of felt and cardboard and different things, and a lot of the seniors can't get out and clean it up themselves. So I would certainly like for our staff to go up I think it's past the construction at a new subdivision up there, and
The new hillside.
the new hillside development and into the homes. Apparently they have gardens up there, and they've been trying to clean up some of the stuff, but apparently there's a lot of debris up there from the constructions, and it's mostly debris from the contractors. That, not blaming the contractors as such, because on windy days it blows away, and before they get a chance to clean it up, because I drove around the site at the construction site in the new homes that's being built, and it didn't look bad at all. It looked pretty neat and clean and everything, but I think that it just it just blew away before they get a chance to clean it up. So either contact the contractors up there and ask them to do it, or because the seniors are not able to do it themselves. And that's it for me, Your Worship.
Councillor Aker, thank you. Councillor Aker?
Yeah, because if the debris is coming from the contract, they're responsible for containing their garbage on site. Maybe one suggestion might be, can we send an inspector up on the next windy day? Because that may be the issue. They're a bit too, I'll just say, based on the account of things, they're a bit too loose in handling their garbage, and if they're not tying it down as they remove it from the houses or whatnot, I think we should be up there basically and talk to them, and I don't know, can we ticket for something like that? Because I hate to see not just the people in Masonic, but any residential area littered from some site where somebody failed to do what we all take for granted and should be done all the time.
And like I said, the seniors can't do it themselves. They're not able to go out. A lot of them are not able to go out and do it themselves. So I would like for us, what's there now, I would like for, if our staff, I don't want to leave it to the contractors to go back to them for 2 or 3 weeks and have it up there.
No.
I certainly would like for us. I would like for us to certainly go up and have a look and see how much is actually up there, and have a crew up there.
Well, municipal enforcement, I would think.
Yeah, I think we need to do that. And the Northeast Avalon Joint Council, the last meeting is tonight at the City of St. John's, if anybody would like to go.
Well, at the Knights of Columbus tonight, so we can't do that. Councillor Aker, new business?
No, I don't have very much, Your Worship, but following up on that point too, it might be a bit difficult, I think, this time of the year getting public works staff to go through cleaning up something that a contractor should do, and maybe I don't know who's going up to check on the site, but we could take all that into account, right? No, I just wanted to pass on condolences to I guess it was the Keatings, the Noseworthys, the Lehmans. Who have I missed? There's one more, and the Mercer's families. Terrible losses, especially for Walter. Walter lived, I believe, not just for the Pooch Cove politics, but for the regional politics. Like Councillor Stoyles, I think he goes to every regional meeting that's out there through M&L and other organizations, and he passionately he was a trailblazer for all the rest of us, right? And he'd be sadly missed. Sonia Lehman, I knew Sonia through Frosty, as many of you did too. She was also a Girl Guide leader, very involved in Church of the Ascension. To her and her family, they must be missing her dearly, and she'll always be missed, not just from her family, but also by the city. That's it for me, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ledwell.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll try and be brief. I do want to extend condolences to the family and friends of all of the individuals in our community that my colleagues have mentioned. I guess in particular, I'd be remiss if I didn't speak on Sonia's passing. I knew Sonia, as Councillor Aker did, through Frosty Festival, and she sort of took me under her wing when I first became a part of the Frosty Festival board. Just I'll share very quickly kind of a humorous story. I visited the wake on Sunday afternoon, and I spoke with Jim Greenland, who of course is well known as another former chair of the Frosty Festival. And Mr. Greenland was telling me how he had spoken to Sonia at an event a couple of weeks back, and she called him over and she said, Jim, I think I'm going to take over the Winter Carnival again. And I don't know if she was being serious or if she was just, having a laugh. But I can tell you one thing: if she probably could have taken it over, and it would have been as well run as it always is. So even in her last days, she held a soft spot for Mount Pearl and for the Frosty Festival. I do want to add one name to the list of condolences. A long-time former city employee, Kevin O'Keefe, recently lost his spouse. This is one that sort of hits home a bit for me because it's my wife's aunt who did pass away. So I just want to extend condolences to Kevin's spouse, to Kevin's family, I guess, and to all of my own family as well. In conclusion, I just want to mention mention the Seniors Independence Group had their closing dinner. Of course, all of council attended a couple of Fridays ago, and it was certainly great to see such a large contingent of people there. I think they had over 270 people at the dinner, and of course a total of 377 members in the Seniors Independence Group. Certainly makes it probably the largest group in the province of its kind. So certainly great to see our seniors community so active, and I wish the new executive and of course President Shirley Boone all the best. And that's it for me.
Thank you, sir, very much. It's so seldom I get the chance to add anything because it's all been covered. Maybe, one of these days I'm going to call myself first just to get a jump on all of you guys. 3 teams. I'm going to read something to you. 3 teams from Newfoundland and Labrador fared well at a recent international robotics competition in Seattle, Washington. Mount Pearl's O'Donnell High School finished first in the engineering panel competition and took home the Ranger Team Spirit Award at the 2013 Marine Advanced Technology Education Remotely Operated Vehicle Competition. The 3-day event concluded Saturday. O'Donnell High's ROV team, or Remote Operated Vehicle Team, has earned the right to attend this international competition for 3 straight years, and their principal, Michelle Clemens, said her students did a phenomenal job at this year's event. I think we're going to send a little note to the principal and to the school, and maybe we can get the names out of the paper of all the kids that participated and pat them on the back as well. What a tremendous thing. The kids in Mount Pearl are just brainiacs. Even if they're not from Mount Pearl, we claim them anyway. Want to pass on that to everybody. I share with everyone the reality that Sonia Lehman and her loss is a loss to her family, a tremendous loss to her church, as was evidenced by the service held for her yesterday, which so many of us were honored to be able to attend. But she was also a tremendous loss to her community, and I define that as 3 different groups. Her church community being one, her guide family certainly being the other, and without doubt, just universally, the city of Mount Pearl, her home. To that end, she is one of our huge city builders, and I think it appropriate that we as a city undertake the task of finding some way to memorialize and recognize that level of commitment to the community and that level of volunteerism, which is, quite frankly, the guiding light of what makes this town our home. She is the embodiment of all of that. We've recognized the late Gordon Seabright by naming a street after him. I'm not sure we have a street available to do that kind of thing when it comes to Mrs. Lehman. But I think her family and her children and the community of acquaintances and friends, which number in the thousands, I think they would appreciate knowing that in some way this city permanently recognized her contribution to the building and the growth of what Mount Pearl stands for. And I'm going to challenge us all as a city to come up with a way, hopefully, to do that. Most other things have been discussed here by all of you today, so I'm going to ask for one thing only, a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor